So, during that period of 47 to 90, a lot of small scale industries were set up in the country riding on the government support. This is a very important thing. They were not based on technological superiority, they were not based on being cost effective. These business drivers were not the focus. Everything was in short supply. So, the government felt it should be made in India and therefore supported everybody who made in India. Small scale companies had a lot of advantages. That is how it started. 90s the whole thing practically stopped, because after that time it was realized, the first point which I said, we are a very small percentage, the number of people directly and indirectly employed in chemical industry is very small. Therefore, the benefits that finally go to people, there was no clarity, no clear cut case that the small companies are contributing either for employment or anything in a big way. And of course, that was also the period where Indian economy was getting integrated globally. Therefore, the question that will be asked is, if you can import it at a reasonable price, why do you make it in India? No longer the argument, but if you make it in India there will be employment, there will be, that was not holding water. So, that was the case. Of course, we are landed up with that historically. Now, if you notice after 90s, the number of small companies is not growing. In fact, many of the small companies are shutting down. Those who have managed to have a very symbiotic relationship between big companies, they thrive. So, it is kind of piggyback right on big companies. So, that is one thing I thought was very interesting. And in slide numbers 16 and 45, he talked about economies of scale chemical Indian chemical companies. Therefore, now our Indian chemical companies also are slowly becoming bigger and larger with global ambitions. So, instead of only meeting Indian market, which is good, chemical companies, big chemical companies especially, have to look at global markets, because global markets people also can compete in India. You are also free to compete anywhere in the world, that sort of a thing. And one factor that is taking place is, I think he mentioned it, globally why companies are bigger, chemical companies, is because access to raw material is very key to chemical companies. This I think I also briefly touched in my lectures. It is not, it is technology knowledge intensive, but it is also intensive very much on the raw materials. And if you do not have availability of raw materials, then it is very hard to build a plant of big size. So, that is the reason. So, many of the Indian companies now are branching out the world, wherever the raw materials are available, you can go and set up your plant there. So, that is the, instead of just being only India focused, now my companies are becoming global focused. Wherever there is a raw material, you set up the plant there and meet the world market, not necessarily if lot of natural gas is available in Tobago and Trinidad, and you can set up a methanol and acetic acid plant there. You can't possibly sell all that output in that plant, in that small tiny island. So, the outlook is becoming global is what came. So, summary of all this is these two slides, two lectures, very number of, I think totally about 50 or 60 slides are there. Keep it and go through that during the lectures, you will find that connect. I am really looking forward to some of you reading it and asking questions, why this, why not that. So, with that I will now come on to this particular lecture. Okay. First thing is, they said that you need not pay taxes.
Not at all.
Yeah, because this there are many kinds of income tax everybody pays, and the raw material taxes, when you buy a raw material also it is taxed, right, value added tax today we call it, those days it used to be called excise duty, and if you sell a finished product also, on the finished product some percentage government will tax. So, they said if the product is made by a small scale company, small scale was defined as the synthesis, then there is no tax on the finished product. So, for the customer, if he sourced it from a small scale company, the idea was that it will turn out cheaper, because the tax component on the finished product was, that is one exemption that they gave. Some governments went and then say, if you set up, I will give you power free of cost for the first 5 years. You operate the unit, power cost is 0. Like that, basic attempt was to reduce their cost, and expectation was this reduction in cost will be passed on to the customers. So, that is what it is. This is direct. Indirectly, sometimes what will happen is you also make it harder for the competitors to compete. Let us say there is a area, chemical area, which is allotted to small scale sector. Then for the larger companies and for imports, you will have 45% charge on the finished product. So, it was trying to make the imports and products made by large companies costlier and products made by the small scale sector cheaper by tax regime. That is what they did. Like I said, mercifully after 90 this kind of a distortions are practically eliminated. Still remnants goes up little bit here and there, but okay. So, back to this lecture is that till now if you recall what all we said is I talked about the jobs primarily from manufacturing sector and the EPCM sector and say what kind of roles that you will play, and then we went back and then said what are the compulsions under which these companies are operating and therefore, what is the job expectation they will transfer, and therefore, any engineer should also be equally equipped to know basics about costs, variable costs, fixed costs, things like that, and a little bit on finance and profitability calculation. So, that you know where your company stands and where you are able to contribute for that. So, that is all. One thing I avoided and I kept saying that I never talked about the third sector of chemicals, which is technology development. There is a user of technology, these are plants which are running it. They just take technology, set up the plant, produce the product, sell it in the market, be happy with that. There are some other second sector was in order to set up a plant you require a special kind of expertise. So, we talked about the EPCM companies which say based on this technology I can help you set up the plant at this cost, but we never really went into the detail of how does the technology get developed at all in the first place. Though I sounded saying that for those of you who are looking for a career, I warned you in saying there are not too many places, not too many places in India, there is not even too many places globally, but it is a very exciting area. So, it is you want to take the risk of bungee jumping, go and jump, it is very exciting, but so this I will briefly in this lecture talk about this and then say how it is handled in companies. Okay. That is what we will do in this. This you have seen. Yeah. First of all, once there is technology, we are not starting at time t is equal to 0. We are starting time t is equal to 2023, which means there is a lot of things that has happened, it is available today. So, we should ask the question of technology development as why do we want to develop this technology? So, it should be a new technology development, because those which are already available, they are available, you just go pay a license fee, somebody will build the plant for you, right, as simple as that. So, there is no development of technology, use of technology yes, but if you want to develop then it has got to be new. What is it? This is one definition of new technology and it is a very practical, very useful definition, which is a new set of new way of making stuff. For example, you say same product, you start with a different raw material to make the same product, that can be a new technology, or you can slightly tweak the product so that it has got better functionalities compared to something else, that can be a superior product. Rarely you will find a product which did not exist suddenly became, at least in chemical industry is very rare. Things happen, for example, Teflon, everybody has heard about this Teflon, fluorinated polymers. Teflon was a invention, I mean it did not exist before 1930s, after 1930s it became available. So, it is possible, but these are far and few between. Most of the time a new technology will be something which is already existing, a different way of making stuff is what we will try to develop. So, that is one definition of that. So, the key point to remember is whenever you are trying to develop something new, you should also do some search and find out how is that same product being made right now, and then in what way your efforts are going to be better than what is already been available there. So, benchmarking of what is existing is very key to do the search before you indulge in technology development, and then some judgment after all this whether somebody else will buy it. So, this is both of them have to be kept together before we get into technology development. Here is an example. Almost invariably world over, if you want to make iron, you start with iron ore and then you go through a process called blast furnace. All of you must have read it in some school onwards everywhere. You take this charge of iron ore, put some coke, limestone, whatever flux material, heat up the whole thing in something called a blast furnace, and iron comes out. The chemical reaction there is Fe2O3, which is iron ore, gets reduced to iron by carbon. Very successful. Global capacity is 830 million tons being made like this, with somebody is more efficient, somebody is less efficient, but basically this process for that. The efficient working, so on like that. The catch recently is it produces a lot of CO2. Obviously, all the oxygen that is in the iron ore finally has to land up in the atmosphere as CO2 in this process. So, there is a bit of a concern. With 830 million tons of steel, you can see how many million tons of CO2 you are putting into the air. So, globally there is a realization, oh my God, are we really doing the right thing? So, alternative method of making iron, same starting from iron ore, can be a new technology. In fact, there is a professor of MIT, I have given the reference Donald Sadoway. During the 90s remember, before all this global warming was just kind of beginning, he thought there must be a better way of doing this, and he is working on that from 90s. His idea was take Fe2O3, electrolyze it, and the electricity is coming from a green source, assume. Then Fe, oxygen comes out, there is no CO2. If this, he has done a lot of work, in fact from lab to little bench scale to some slightly larger bench scale, efforts are going on from 1995 to 2020, he is still working on it. At the end of it, if he converts it into a set of basic engineering, detail engineering, layout, specifications, that will qualify as new technology. Switching back, in the olden days, if we wanted to buy provisions for our house, dal, rice, whatever, we worked, I think, imagine last century most probably, where I was born at. We used to go to a shop, give a list of what our requirements are, either you collect it or you tell the shopkeeper provide that service to me. So, he will say leave the list to me, I will take your address, somebody will come in the evening and deliver it to us. You can either pay cash or they keep a register and then account it, at the end of the month you can do. This is the way buying and selling, technology of one kind. Some use is being made in a particular sequence of activities. Today you have got, I think, probably 10 different apps you can log in, select, the shops can be different, the deliverer can be different, and the payments can be different, but the same method in a superior way. Superiority you can define in whatever way you want, convenience, fast, variety, what have you, technology. So, technology in whatever form, new technology means you must compare it with an existing proven one, and against which how are you going to have completely different way of doing things. Minor tweaking here and there does not qualify as technology, little bit, and though a better insulation material has come, you have a heat loss in a plant, you provide some insulation to reduce the heat loss, somebody has come out with a different insulation material. So, you find out, do the cost benefit analysis, remove the insulation, put the new insulation, you will get energy savings, probably it will be profitable as well, right. The example which I gave as an assignment, heat recovery, is that new technology? No, it is an application of known principles in a very clever way to realize a benefit, which is welcome. In fact, 90% like I said, jobs are of that type, because you have something existing going on, you are constantly looking for improvements and then you go through that. But technology is really, which is fundamentally different way of doing things. How to recognize technology therefore is, if somebody talks about technology, you must ask what does he has got, does he have the basic engineering package. What is basic engineering package is, some of the essentials I have said is, there must be a clean process flow diagram. It should also be translated into a P&I diagram. You must have the complete material and energy balances and so on like that. Mere ideas is not technology. Obviously, I am stating this, there is a reason I am stating this, nor is an exciting research finding is not technology, because in popular press these two have now, in my opinion, have hijacked. You open any news, especially popular newspapers, you just open, there is a breakthrough technology announced by this fellow. I advise you take it with a pinch of salt, because you go back to the person who is having this and say, can you show me what you have done in terms of this material. Sometimes the material and energy balance do not themselves exist in that research work. It is a very interesting observation somebody has found, therefore, he thinks he has created a technology for the future. Okay? Just keep that in mind. I am doing this in order to actually deflate the expectations about technology. It is very hard, very tough work. Of course, it is super exciting. So, if you are going to commit your lives and career to technology development, I think I owe it to you to tell you the truth. So, which is the reason I am little bit overplaying, perhaps, keep that in mind. Research is of two, basically two kinds. One is this fundamental research, where you are kind of exploring nature with no expectation, you are just exploring nature to figure out what is going on, okay? That is fundamental research. Applied is you are motivated, you have some backup, something you are expecting, your purpose is very clear, that is applied research. In fact, somebody jovially said, in pure research, if you know what you are doing, you should not be doing it, because you know what you are doing. What is research? Switch to applied research. If you do not know what you are doing it, please do not do it, because then you will go anywhere. So, that is the difference between the two. In fundamental research, obviously takes place in a very different kind of a environment, usually in academic institutions, where there is no kind of pressure, performance, that kind of a down to earth things are not discussed. Now, the focus of fundamental research is novelty, something new has to be done. It is not utility, whether it is useful or not is not question, okay? That is what it is. And the information is shared in peer reviewed journals. If somebody has done basic research, they share it in peer research journals. Now, innovation is slightly different. Innovation is not discovery, it is you are trying to arrange things in a manner that there is something which is distinctly better than what is existing. So, there is a purpose behind this. In fact, this quote I liked, I am sure you will also like. In the Cavendish labs, when electron was discovered, I think they celebrated and said, we have discovered electron. People were speculating, charge, is it electron core or electron on the outside or whatever. So, after they found out that there is E by m and all that was discovered, everybody was celebrating and they said, may it be of use to nobody. So, that is a pure science, you found something, you are so happy about it. Okay. On the other hand, this book I mentioned, the second one is Scott Berkin book, it is a nice tiny book, please do buy. It is called Myth of Innovation. Innovation also sometimes is hyped up. He has got a very nice book. Basically, it says innovation's touchstone is, will anybody buy it at a price, then that is innovation. So, we have switched from one sweeping fundamental discovery of nature's beauty to something which somebody is willing to pay money and buy it like that. The key to therefore technology or innovation is, what is the base level existing one and what improvements that we go through. This improvement part I really draw your attention, keep that in mind. This you can. Applied research obviously is patented, okay. So, there is no hurry to go and publish it, because you want to keep the know-how to yourself. So, first they cover a patent. In fact, in IIT ourselves we tell our researchers, if you have a good idea, first come to ICSR office where I work, we will figure it out what is the potential use for it, we will help you take a patent, then go and publish. So, that is what we do. Okay. Okay. So, in terms of funding, research invariably everywhere universally is by government, public authorities, tiny portion, and the tiny portion can be very tiny as it is in India, or it can be reasonably tiny as it is in the United States by private sector, by businesses, but invariably all research is more or less government funded. Okay. get back to this, I mentioned about existing and improvements is the hallmark for technology development. Technology itself being a new way of doing things supported by lot of data information. Here is an example of ammonia is a well known commodity, right, made again in thousands of millions of tons worldwide. Ammonia NH3, what is so about it? And if you read through the history of ammonia, it has gone through a lot of interesting. Originally people wanted ammonia, they used to take ammonium salts, break them down, get ammonia. Take ammonium sulphate for example, treat it with caustic soda, ammonia gas gets liberated. Take ammonium nitrate for example, very carefully break it down because it is an explosive, you can get ammonia. Like so, ammonia was got basically from mined natural sources. Then from there to actually synthesizing ammonia, Haber process was technology. You took nitrogen, which is the inert of the inert of the inert materials, and make ammonia out of that, which meant one had to know about catalyst, then you have to know, okay, I have to get pure nitrogen, how do I get hydrogen, what are the conditions, that is technology development end to end. Now here again it changed, I put natural gas, then people have said natural gas CH4, what you want is only the H4, C is a carrier, it just brings hydrogen along with it. So when you pull out that hydrogen and convert it to ammonia, that C becomes CO2 and goes into the atmosphere. So then why not coal? Even though it is only C, has no hydrogen, you can take C and nicely convert it, react it with water, you get COH2, do one more water gas shift reaction, CO2 H2, but this time all the hydrogen coming from water, you got your hydrogen, ejected CO2, nitrogen comes from the air, make ammonia, another way of making ammonia. So that is a rich history of how ammonia technology is developed over a period of time in response to that. Nowadays of course, there is a different attempt is CO2 is a big problem, and therefore hydrogen without CO2 there are several ways you are there. In all this, when you are coming a new technology, the key issue for chemical engineers is what is the performance criteria. It is not that the idea is new or novel, that is welcome, that is research, but if you are going to be a technologist involved in technology development, then you have to ask, in my process or whatever process that we are thinking of, against a benchmark, you have to define the benchmark, take whichever is the most commonly adopted, let us take that as a benchmark. Against that, what is your new process going to bring in benefits? It is given that of course this process will be without CO2 generation, is a given benefit, shall we come out of that please, and then ask other benefits like how much energy will it cost, because these two questions which keeps coming to us, how much will it cost, how much will it cost to set up the plant. So then you have to go back and say those two performance criteria you give me, then I will be able to judge whether this is likely to be an innovative thing resulting in some market. May not be tomorrow, may not be in the next 10 years, but at least in the next so many years do I make steps to go through that. The other example is batteries. Historically the batteries, everybody started with the lead acid battery, workhorse, lead acid battery, anode cathode, stores energy, release energy. Nowadays it is lithium ion. Wherever you go you talk about lithium ion batteries being talked about as energy storage. If you have to come out with a new type of a battery as an energy storage device, you have to think of what is the performance criteria for that battery vis-a-vis your benchmark. Okay. Here I will spend 1 minute of telling that I am giving out the answer just to make you think, but question this what I say. In a battery, supposing I define the performance criteria of the battery is two things. One is what is the storage per dollar money, or the reverse, how much money the battery will cost per kilowatt hour energy storage. This is one criteria, right, simple criteria. Battery is supposed to do what? Store energy and release energy. So it is, there is a capacity measurement, that capacity measurement I take it as kilowatt hour of the battery. Then how much will it cost to set up that entire battery system terminal to terminal, I figure out. So that is in dollar terms, rupees terms. So rupees per kilowatt hour can be one performance criteria. Second is I put 1 kilowatt of energy into the battery system, charge it, then I draw, can I draw exactly one out? we suspect probably not, right. Nothing in this world, second law says, is 100% efficient. You probably will have to put 1 point plus energy into it, so that you are able to draw 1 out of that. So, that is the turnaround efficiency, that is the second criteria. So, first criteria is the cost of that, second criteria is the efficiency, turnaround efficiency. There can be 2 criteria. So, if you come out with a new type of a battery, the first thing would be to say, okay, this has come, do you have enough data, from the data can I make out how does it compare with, let us say, lithium ion battery, how does it compare with lead acid battery, how does it compare with vanadium flow battery, whatever you want to call it as, but the 2 performance criteria should be crystal clear. Now, this is not the only 2 performance criteria, you can think of others, but you must, point is you must have a very clear cut set of performance criteria and not be taken away by the most popularly said. For example, lithium is in short supply globally, you have heard about this statement, right. Everybody, McKinsey guys are here, by the way, everybody talks about lithium being short supply and so on, and there are lot of articles saying that geological survey, today's production with cost going up like this, extra production will come into the market, all that sort of. So, the guy who is developing a non lithium ion battery excuses, but my battery does not use lithium. Good, but is that all? Should we develop a battery just because there is a problem of lithium? Of course, there is a problem to be attended to, but can there be only one performance criteria at the cost of dollar per kilowatt hour turnaround efficiency? If you factor in all that and then it turns out to be overall factor 1, factor 2, factor 3, then it is a good choice. Then you should develop the technology seriously. So, before you get into technology development, it requires a lot of careful analysis. In fact, these jobs in technology development, though they are very few, it is so exciting because it is the one place, if you recall my first lecture, the highest level of basics requirement is there. In a manufacturing job, you require a reasonable amount of fundas. If you know you are reasonably okay in heat transfer, mass transfer, reaction engineering, process control, you can get by. Whenever you are in doubt, you can go and read the book, you can get by. In EPCM, you have to be a little bit more stronger because you have to interact with multiple number of, this we discussed. In technology development field, you have to be like cat's whiskers. Additionally, you must also be on top of the world with respect to business assessment. So, it is a very interesting, challenging, exciting area, but very demanding area. So, keep that in mind. Notice at this point of time, none of this will start with cost straight away, because even in the battery example which I said, dollars per kilowatt hour or rupees per kilowatt hour, the technology developers do not start with that number straight away. Instead, they start with technical parameters such as turnaround efficiency, yield, conversion, selectivity, all that stuff. And then you make that Excel sheet of cost estimation, what we saw, all the items listed, consumption norms are listed, rates are listed, one multiplied by the other, we take the total. You work that out and then come at the cost. If you do that, then you will realize cost can be brought down by attacking and working on this area like that. So, we do not start the question with cost, we keep that at the back of the mind, but we look at technical details in order to zero in on which are the ones that has to be worked upon in a very aggressive manner with basic research, with laboratory work, scale up and so on like that. Second is, we have to look at this metrics in technology development not in one point of time, because in the labs typically what happens, those of you who do research career, you will realize as it is getting a PhD is 4.5 years, 5 years, okay, hard work. Then you want to move on with your life, right. So, you will do the work obviously in the lab scale for that period of time, but chemical plant, like I said, minimum 15 years have to last. Therefore, you have to have a lot of other work carried out. So, that is technology development. Then it should also scale up. something is very nice, like for example, there is a technique called atomic layer deposition. Somebody, you must read about this. It is, let us say, if you know, people have gone about galvanizing, you would have heard about. They take iron, then coat that surface with zinc, then iron gets protected against corrosion under some conditions. How do you do? There are so many people who are galvanizing. Hot dip galvanizing is you have a bath of zinc, molten zinc, you dip your article into that and take it out, make sure that the method of dipping, time of exposure, viscosity of the fluid is such that the film is well controlled. That is one way. Second is, you can take a spray gun, spray that molten metal on top of that shapes, get the same film. Second way of doing things. This atomic layer deposition is atomic level one layer of one material is coated on other layer. As you can imagine, it is a fancy equipment, very high 10 power minus 6 torr, that kind of a vacuum you create. You have the target material here, you create that material to which it gets ionized, comes and deposits onto this. Beauty being, one single layer in all intricate shapes, it gets nicely conformally coated there. Now, if you are done with an R&D work with atomic layer and got some very interesting results, the question would be, if tomorrow if 100,000 tons of that plant has to be built, how do you coat this? The coating equipment being, like I said, 10 power minus 6 torr, this is the target material, you put it inside and here you have that, it gets coated. But if this has to be done at that level, it is not to say atomic layer deposition is a useless technique, that is not the point. But if you are a technology developer as opposed to a pure researcher, researcher's idea stops there, because he has got a nice idea, he has shown it in the lab, he moves on with his career, publishes a paper also. But if that technology developer means he has to meet the market, means he has to keep it in mind, this idea, if I have to scale it up, will it scale up, for example. When you put all this, then the pathway to financial viability will become clear. Notice I used a word called pathway. I am not saying guaranteed, because everybody who goes into technology development is aware that nothing is guaranteed in life. Therefore, a lot of people are willing to take the risk and support and fund you, knowing that quite a lot of that will not be successful, but they are wanting to see the pathway, because if somebody comes 20% of the way and fails, after some time maybe another person will come and pick up from there and move 20 to 40, and over a period of things gets built up. So, that is what is looked at. But if you do not have the pathway itself, then technology development is not the career choice. By now you would have noticed from what I said, one thing it is clear, it is going to take a lot of time, right. As it is, lab work takes you 5 years, but it is technology development is long term affair. Any technology, chemical technology that has been developed, if you read through histories, there are lots of places where you can read the history of that. It is a well drawn out, thought out process. So, only those are people who have the internal drive and ability to convince finance providers that about this pathway would find technology development as a proper choice. Of course, there are a lot of well proven technology development companies. One way which you can, out of interest, you can go through, there is a magazine called Chemical Engineering, Simple Chemical Engineering. It is not a high flying scientific magazine, it is a very trade journal kind of a thing. It must be available in our library, or of course in Google you can. This Chemical Engineering magazine, McGraw-Hill owned every 2 years they announce an award for technology developers. It is a very nicely contested event, and then they have a team of people analyzing it, and then they reward them. It is a fairly substantial financial reward, plus it is very prestigious. It is a history of how, what are the kind of technologies that are getting developed. It will be nice to see variety, right from biochemistry to CO2 reduction to what not. Yeah, this is probably the last slide. Now, till now what I have said in this class, I have said that one area we have not touched was technology development, jobs related to technology development. not abstract technology development. I think more our interest is as a career for me when I pass out, can I get into technology development. From that perspective, I gave some idea what this technology development is all about, okay, such as how to recognize what is a technology, and there are a lot of pitfalls I pointed out on the way, including hype, because this area being so exciting and the winners get so much, there is a lot of hype around it, but beware of the hype. So, that is what I taught. The useful indicators are, do you have a basic engineering package, or you have information that can be converted into a basic engineering package. So, if your work is complete in such a manner that another chemical engineer and you can sit with them and drive this, then you have got the beginnings of technology. That is what I said. Secondly, I also said is it takes a lot of time, and you have to be very carefully choosing in which area you should work on. See, being a grad student working on emerging areas is very challenging, interesting, because the funding is done by somebody, there is a guide available to you to kind of help you. You can engage yourself for a period of 3-4 years, but definitely you are looking for what next, either as a postdoc or as a faculty member somewhere else or somewhere else. You are not going to be hung up on that idea. Unlike this Sadoway fellow in MIT, from 95 this guy's only goal in life is how do I make iron out of electrolysis process. I am sure they will go somewhere, they are already gone up to this. So, that you keep it in mind. So, the point is research is the mother of all ideas, churning of ideas and coming out, very interesting, very exciting. From there, if you have to walk the earth and come to technology development, there is a connection, and this connection pathway briefly in a matter of 40 minutes I have told you all that. There is one thing is there is a lot of activities very clear that is to be done between the initial idea stage to a stage where it can be at least called as emerging technology or early stages of technology, whatever name you want to call it, right. This is a process called technology readiness level, TRL. This is what we are going to delve into in the next few classes. It is important to pay attention to this TRL because it is one of the most abused terms. You go to any seminar, everybody will talk about TRL. Outside you come and say, can you repeat it, what did you say? No, but TRL I told, yeah, but I did not understand what is TRL, can you explain to me? But I told you, no, it is TRL. Sir, I did not understand what TRL is, I am asking you, can you explain to me TRL? You read up TRL. I am not joking, this is how the word is getting used, because no one gets into, and it is so hard in a way, unless you appreciate it, you can very easily dwell on the surface and not get. This journey of what it is to convert an idea into something which can really be used for actually developing a viable technology is what is the TRL. This we will do from I think probably on Thursday's class, because Wednesday is going to be, like I said, a person from outside is going to come and talk about that. Okay. So, thank you for your attention. We will meet again on Wednesday, and class this particular continuation TRL is on Thursday. Okay. Thank you for your attention.